right, everybody, welcome to Where Does It Go Wednesday, and Ask Evelyn with myself. Hi, I'm Becca Fong. I do single family outreach for Seattle Public Utilities, and I'm joined by.
Hi, I'm Pat Kaufman. I'm with Seattle Public Utilities as well. I'm a commercial recycling and composting program manager.
And we're super excited to come to you guys for another fun-filled week of answering your questions. This week happens to be Drinking Water Week. So we've got a question that has to deal with some recycling and drinking water, where those two intersect. And then we also have a really great question about gardening and mulching, because a lot of people have been getting outside. So we've gotten a question about that as well. As always, if you guys have questions for us, you can send them to us in our feeds, either Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. You can also send them to askevelyn@seattle.gov, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. So, Pat, do you want to kick us off?
Yes. Question number one was about water bottles. You know what? I don't have my sheet with me. It's in the other room. Can you ask the question, Becca?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. Our question came in says, Dear Evelyn, I try to make sure I have my reusable water bottle with me at all times, but sometimes I forget and I buy a bottle of water when I'm out. I reuse it throughout the day and then I recycle it. I heard that only 20% of water bottles actually get recycled. Is that true?
Wow. So, some of the stats about plastic, we'll just talk about plastic real quick first. A lot of the media folks out there say, only 5% of plastic in the world gets recycled. Well, you have to think about all the plastic that's produced in the world, and then think about what we actually try and recycle, and then you think about the performance of the recycle system. So not that I'm getting defensive about recycling programs, but there is a big difference between all the plastic bottles produced in the world and then all the plastic bottles that are produced in communities like ours, where we will collect them for recycling. Unfortunately, a lot of communities around the world or around the US, they don't have recycling programs in place. So those sort of performance percentage games are a little bit hard to track. I don't know what the capture rate is in Seattle for plastic bottles. That would be a challenging piece of data to pull up. But once the bottle goes in the bin, it's a really high percentage of bottles recycled. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about it last time. So plastic water bottles, and I thought I had a prop around here, but I can't find mine. So plastic water bottles are generally PET, and it's a super valuable plastic recyclable commodity, right? So, we talked about it, I think, a couple of episodes ago, of when the material goes from the cart to the truck to the MRF, which is the materials recovery facility where all the recycling gets sorted. What happens with plastic water bottles is that they actually go through all the equipment, they kind of travel through, and then they go through an optical sorter, which I just like to talk about because it's got lasers. And so what happens is, as the material is going underneath the optical sorter, the lasers detect the chemical compositions of the different plastics that are going through, and then it refracts the laser light at different levels. And then when it detects a PET water bottle, it shoots a puff of air and it shoots it off to be sorted. So it's one of those things that's super valuable, and it's being sorted specifically for plastic water bottles, things that are PET, and then milk jugs, which are HDPE. Those have kind of very specific optical sorters. So if they do get, like you were saying, if they get to the cart, they get to the truck, they get to the MRF, we're sorting those, and those industries are pretty robust, even with all the changes.
The commodity value is very stable, very strong for plastics. I mean, it definitely has a connection with petroleum. So right now, markets aren't super strong because petroleum has dropped so low. But the point is that these recycling companies, independent private companies, would not invest in these $1 million laser machines that do the optical sorting that you talk about if they didn't know that this water bottle commodity would have value and be able to be brokered, throughout the recycling system to other manufacturers. And we can talk a little bit about what those bottles come back as often. I mean, it's a variety of things, of course. The water bottles are taken, as Becca described, and they're sorted mechanically. There's some quality control staff members at the recycle center that double check to make sure that all the water bottles that went down that conveyor belt, they're not just water bottles, of course, there's pop bottles.
Just lots of plastic stuff,
the PET bottles, but we're talking about water bottles today.
Right.
So all the water bottles go down that conveyor belt, And before they squish them into a bale, and the bale is what they broker on the marketplace to the recyclers, they do a little quality control check. Once it goes to the recycle center, then that facility will take it and they do a shredding, a chipping procedure where they chip it down into a little flake. And then they run it through a bath type process, a machine that can kind of wash the plastic a little bit. Still got to make sure your bottles are clean before you recycle it. Just because there's this other process down a couple steps doesn't mean we don't have to keep our bottles clean as we recycle them. But the point is they do that, and then they heat it up and they re-extrude it through a plastic machine and make little pellets, little BBs kind of size of little plastic pieces. Then that's the actual commodity that then is sold to other plastic manufacturers, like people who make carpet or polar fleece or
new bottles. Some manufacturers are
Yeah.
using it to make new bottles as well. It's so funny when you're talking about the extruding, it made me think when my kids are playing with Play-Doh and you smash it into the thing and it stretches it out into little bits.
Just an industrial version of that. That's what I'm talking about, you know.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was kind of an interesting thing was we used to get questions about if you should put the caps back on. And we always tell people put the plastic caps on plastic containers. When you're talking about that shredding process,
Yeah.
the cap is made out of a different plastic than the bottle.
It is.
But what happens is that they have different densities. So one will float and one will sink. And so they're easily separatable. But only for plastic on plastic.
We used to get a lot of questions about the little ring that remains on the
Oh,
bottle.
right.
Well, what about the ring? Do I have to take the ring off? Like, you know, for a while before caps came along, that was part of the process.
Right.
And, you know, so it was then and it is now a different density. So it's a float sink separation. Yeah.
Which is kind of cool. I mean, we're your local recycle nerds, and that's probably why you're watching us on Ask Evelyn, to just find out stuff like this.
Right.
So, and I think you're right to say this question came to us from Jay, and yeah, absolutely. To recap, so it's really hard to check out the stats, right, of how much what percentage of water bottles are being recycled. If they're being recycled in our system in Seattle, if they make it to your cart and to the MRF, I would say that with confidence, I would say just about 100% of them are being recycled because they're super valuable.
I mean, it's a big facility, a lot of moving parts and pieces. So the occasional water bottle will end up, unfortunately, in the bale of aluminum or the, bale of cardboard or something like that. Things get caught within each other around. So that happens. And they have to move the belt at certain speeds so they can get the whole pile of recyclables that get dropped off every day through the facility. They can't just, allow it to continue to gather. So there are some performance factors in there about the recycle center. But the intention is always to get every single water bottle into the water bottle bale.
Totally. And then certainly empty, clean, and dry. So you got to make sure that there's no water left in there.
Right.
And then, screw the cap back on, put it into your recycle bin, your recycle cart, send it off to us, and we'll take care of it from there. I think one other thing that was great that I kind of read in his question is that definitely, it happens. Sometimes you don't have your reusable water bottle with you and you do have to buy it when you're out and about. Probably less these days.
One of these.
But making sure to reuse it. So Pat, you've got, most of us bring reusable water bottles, and just really, really quickly, because we could get super, super nerdy about this. But what do you use for a reusable water bottle, and what would you suggest?
Well, we have a couple of these in the cupboard at the house, and I'll take it with us when we're going out for the day or something. I have another little one that's in my backpack I keep with me as I go to and from work or whatever. Not currently, but usually. And then we also will refill plastic water bottles and reuse them at times. If you like gallon jugs of water, sometimes if we buy those for camping or something like that, if you have those gallon jugs, we reuse them. And I just put a little Sharpie, I write the date on them. I have a half dozen of those bottles downstairs under the steps, for just in case or something. So, I mean, plastic water bottles are very utilitarian, great function, very convenient. I mean, we all use them at times, but it's the idea of just, get a couple uses out of them if you can.
Sure.
And always be sure to recycle them, if you're using them.
Totally. Yeah, I think, I have all kinds. I have metal ones, I have plastic ones, I have, disposable ones that I reuse over and over again. But I think it's just, use it as much as you can, you guys. Get as many uses out of it as you can is really, really kind of the best thing to think about.
And if you want to use one that's really good, right? Then if you want to keep track of one, sometimes they kind of come and go through the household. If you buy one for $20, $30, then you're going to hold on to that. You can also find them though at Goodwill and thrift stores. They're in really good condition. Some folks, aren't into that, but it's a very affordable option in those opportunities. There's also websites, that like the Buy Me Once website where they only going to sell really high quality options like the stainless steel versions and stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. I did have one other thing that came up because it is Drinking Water Week. Seattle's got fantastic drinking water right out of the tap. It comes straight from the Cedar River watershed. I know that we are one of the few, if not the only, municipal water or utility water district that actually can have water come straight from the source. We of course do some filtration and we have some different additives in it. I'm not the water expert for sure. But, one thing that people do ask about occasionally from the recycle side is, so this happened to me. I live in an older home. I had galvanized pipes that I needed to replace. And so while the water was fantastic coming to my house, the water coming through the pipes into my tap, out of my sink, were not great. And so we get questions occasionally about, if I'm using a water filter, what should I do with the used filters? And I think that the best solution is really to just put them in the trash. They serve their purpose. Some companies will, take them back and recycle them. I certainly am not qualified to kind of vet all of those options. When I used one until we could replace the pipes in our house, I would put those in the trash. So like your Brita filters or your Pure filters, those kinds of things. But now that we've done that, the water is fantastic. It is really, really good. So refill your water bottles with some of the best drinking water in the entire nation.
I agree.
All right. There's my plug for Drinking Water Week. We have one other question that came in, and it's about gardening and mulching. A lot of folks have been getting outside. I know I have, Pat. I'm sure you've probably been getting outside.
Yard work, yes.
Yep. So it says, Dear Evelyn, I've decided to get back in my garden. I'll get my garden back into shape this spring. I got some compost mixed in. I got some seeds sown. And with all that bare soil, I'm wondering what I should use for mulch. I thought about buying wood chips or bark, but I wanted to know what else I could use that I already have on hand. Awesome. I'm always looking for that. I've got a magnolia and a cedar tree that I usually rake up all the stuff that they drop and put it into my compost cart. Could I just use that? And I think kind of as our last conversation of like, use what you got and use it as much as possible. I certainly have trees that are very, very messy. I think there must have been a point in time when somebody was selling a lot of magnolias to single family homes in Seattle, because I got one of those. It's a fantastic tree, but it makes 2 spectacular messes a year. Right now it's making its first home, which is dropping petals all over everything, and they're stuck all over my car. So I definitely use that. Use what you have on hand. I rake those up. The petals are fantastic to put onto your garden beds because you want to mulch, because it'll keep the moisture in your soil, and it'll also block the light from weed seed germination, which is really great. You might want to wait to mulch until after your seeds have come up. So it sounds like this person has just sown them, which is great. Another thing that I have used too as well, and like you always gotta have props, right?
Yeah.
So we also have kind of a little conifer. It's kind of hard to see there.
Oh yeah.
Like if I can make it better. So, you can put this right down, and this is free. I'm all about free. I'm all about reuse. So these things are great. You just need them to kind of create a layer on top of the soil, keep the moisture in, and prevent the light from getting down onto the soil to let your weed seeds germinate.
Yeah.
Another thing, I'll use a paper bag as well and put some of that stuff on top to weight it down. This will break down over time, which is also great. Some people, I don't know if my neighbors are really excited about this, but I also will put my coffee grounds and paper filters out as part of a mulch, because again, you're just trying to cover the ground. You're trying to keep the moisture in and prevent the light from germinating the weed seeds. It looks a little messy, but I'm okay with that.
High nutrient content there is what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
exactly. So there's all kinds of things that you can use. So
I think the other option is, there's a lot of tree service companies around, and
totally.
There are certain websites or certain options for signing up for the chips, the chipper machines that chip up all the wood and tree limbs and whatnot. Or if you just see a tree service company in the neighborhood, you flag them down and say, hey, you want to dump your load in my driveway today or part of it? The problem is sometimes you can get 10 yards of chips in your driveway, and then it's a lot. But there's ways on some of the websites to tell them exactly how much you want, and then they know how much they have in the truck and if you're the right one and so on. And then there's also, when you talked about the paper bag, cardboard is a great weed suppressant. There's no need to go to the home and garden center and buy the weed block plastic, sheet.
Please don't buy that.
I mean, it's a product that works, but the idea of just, again, use what you have, and you'd be surprised at how well a layer of cardboard between the garden bed, top and your mulch that you add just provides a great weed block. And it just disappears over a couple seasons. You don't even know it's there. It's just, breaks down.
Totally. I think those are all super great options. And I mean, the food and yard waste cart, I think Pat and I talked about this a couple of episodes ago. Once we had service for all single family homes, and now we have it at family properties as well, it is super convenient to put a lot of stuff in that cart. But if you can use it on site, it's even better. It doesn't have to travel to the compost facility. Right. Awesome. Those nutrients go right back into your garden. Yeah. So I think, if you do want to buy mulch, which I totally get, there are a couple of options. One, I wanted to plug the garden hotline, gardenhotline.org. They have tons of resources. They're literally like a hotline. You can call them and talk to the garden educators, and they will answer your questions, which is great. Right. They also have a great website. Another option too is savingwater.org, which has really, really great resources like a mulch calculator. If you did want to buy some mulch, it'll help you know how much, because you might order a delivery to your house, and do you get 5 yards? Do you get 10 yards? Those are, for a lot of people, it's just this giant pile, and it's really hard to figure out how much exactly you need. So definitely gardenhotline.org and savingwater.org/lawn and garden. And they've got a mulch calculator, which will be pretty awesome. But I'm all in mulch.
Yep. I think purchasing mulch is great too. I mean, the bagged mulch products that you can get at the garden centers, that's great, because that's closing our loop. A lot of the mulch you see at the garden center, regardless of the label, I mean, it doesn't matter what brand it is, whether it's, some, it doesn't, I'm not going to name any of them because I don't really know for sure which is which, but many of the brands, they're purchasing their compostable element. The recipe that they make for mulch can include our yard waste and our food waste from our house. So a lot of them, locally, Cedar Grove, of course, is one of the main ones. Oh, for sure. Stuff goes there, goes through their system, comes back as a product. You can buy that. But the other composter we work with, Lens Composting up in Stanwood, they sell their finished grade compost to multiple other companies that have product. And so it's good to close the loop and buy mulch if you want to. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Pat and I wanted to launch, well, maybe not launch, but continue a kind of a fun segment that we've been doing where we all talk about maybe a new tip or trick we're going to try for the week. So, and then we'll report back next week and tell you how we did, because there's always room to improve, right? Like everybody, there's always ways that you can reduce your waste. You can get a little bit better at recycling. You can figure out how to reuse things in a different way. So Pat and I will bring you a different challenge. So my challenge this week is I'm going to try to not throw away any food from the refrigerator. It is tough. I have 2 small children, and let me tell you, those children do not eat all the food. I don't know why. I want to eat all the food. They don't always eat it all. So that's my challenge. We'll see how I do, and I will report back to you guys next week.
Well, I like that challenge. I usually am in that space all the time. I eat all the food here, but I would say, I thought about this, and we talked about this. I'm going to try and take shorter showers, I'm going to reduce my the cleaning period. One trick I already do is I'll take the old shrunken bar of soap and stick it to the new one, kind of rub it a little bit, and then it's kind of like a little bump on the new bar, but then, you're never like losing that little bit. And so. Of
course you do, Pat.
I get myself to do that because I already do that, but I'll try to shorten my showers a little bit.
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. So we'll report back. I'll let you know how the leftovers go.
I'll set a time. I'll get a stopwatch and I'll see if I can improve my performance.
All right. Well, thank you guys all for joining us this week. It has been awesome. This is another episode of Ask Evelyn for Where Does It Go Wednesdays. And I'm Becca Fong.
And I'm Pat Kaufman.
And thanks. Keep on recycling, recycle right. And
we'll see you next week at 10:30 and at 11:30 on Wednesdays.
All right. See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.